if the currency falls even more, which everybody expects that it would, there are more people who are going to think in Iran that there's nothing to there's that it's not worth, everything. No cost is too much for getting rid of the Islamic Republic because they have not much to live for.
I mean, first of all, just thoughts are with the brave Iranian people. I listened to some people, American think tank type people who've been involved in American policy. They're kind of friendly with the Turkish. But one thing that was really worried me listening to them is this idea. I mean, I think Turkey's really worried about the Kurds in Iran getting strong, apart from maybe an alliance between Israel and Iran. And they really don't want this to happen. They want to continue a weak regime in Iran. The argument for that is that Iran's going to collapse and all fall apart and it's going to be chaos. I'm just wondering your thoughts on that. In particular, the Kurdish ethnicities, whether they support a united Iran, how many of them support a united Iran, how many of them want to separate off. But also, I mean, they're also thinking that the American policy might be just to take out the Ayatollah and have someone from the regime come in and keep things together. I mean, I would hope that after all the Iranian people have been through, that's just not possible. But I mean, I don't know whether big powers like the US really care about people. That's more about being ruthless and doing what's best for their own country.
All right, really good questions. I do want to encourage more people to raise their hand. Again, the reaction button is at the bottom of your screen. Click on it, and then you raise your hand like this, right? So you could BT will add you to the list. So first of all, I just want to, sorry for being nitpicky. As an Iranian, I do have to say this again. As non-Iranians, I understand the language that you're using, but please understand why we Iranians have to be correcting this line of questioning. So when you're talking about the Kurdish separatists, it's important not to refer to them as Kurds, as the Kurds in Iran, because the vast majority of Iranian Kurds are not separatists; they're patriots, and they are also fighting for Prince Reza Pahlavi to come back to Iran, and they are united with the rest of Iran, right? So if we're talking about the Kurds getting strong, like Turkey, when you say like Turkey is worried about the Kurds getting strong, no, not the Kurds, the Kurdish separatists, because most Iranian Kurds are united with the rest of Iran, and we want Iranian Kurds getting stronger. They are going to be fighting against the separatists, right? So the Kurdish separatists, their main enemy is patriotic Kurdish Iranians who see themselves as Iranian first and Kurdish second. So Iranian Kurds becoming stronger is an anti-separatist, has an anti-separatist effect, not a pro-separatist effect, right? So when we're talking about the separatists, let's name them as separatists, not just the Kurds. And in fact, the Kurdish people in Iran, they have a lower percentage of separatists among them compared to maybe like among the Turks, they're still a minority, but it's a little bit higher there, like the Azeris, or maybe some in the Baluchistan. So I think the least, I mean, they're more armed, right, compared to the Turks, like the separatists there, but they have even less support compared to separatists, for example, in the northwest areas of Iran, even though they're a minority there as well. I mean, for example, we weren't expecting for people from some people were suggesting that we're not going to see Tabriz to participate in this revolution because this revolution is very patriotic, very nationalistic, very pro Pahlavi, which is something a lot of Iranians are like, oh, Tabriz is not going to join in. But we saw Tabriz rose up and made us proud, and they came out and supported the Shah during this revolution. And one of the most beautiful chants that came out of the Turkish areas was Turkish, Farsi, the Persians and the Turks. We are all united for a free Iran, right? They were chanting that in Turkish, Iranian Turks, right? Iranian Azeris, which shows that we are all united under our national identity and we don't care about our ethnic identities right now. So, what was the Oh, so you're saying Turkey wanted it is our understanding is that, Erdogan and maybe Saudi Arabia and some of these other countries would prefer a weak Iran under the Islamic Republic, even if they don't like the Islamic Republic. Sometimes they seem to prefer a weak Iran under the Islamic Republic rather than a free Iran. So that is true. This is they do seem to. I mean, now they're changing their tune because a lot of them think a war is inevitable, but they would have preferred not having like a complete regime change. With regards to being worried about chaos, honestly, I don't. Every transition is going to be messy to some extent, right? You cannot have a completely smooth, problem free transition. But I think Iran is going to be able to handle that better than other countries. I mean, like, for example, people compare it to Iraq and Lebanon and Syria, but like there is no strong Iraqi identity that unites Iraq together. Like, for example, Kurdish Iraqis, they see themselves as Kurdish more than Iraqi. Like there is not that much of an Iraqi strong patriotic Iraqi identity, especially because these are new countries that have just been made up. Iran has like an ancient culture. They have deep roots in their literature, their poetry, their legends. There's something that the roots of Iranian history and culture are so deep that bonds the entire country in such a way that you don't see it in Iraq or Lebanon or Syria or these other countries in the region who have just recently been made up by Western powers, right? And that's very important because it creates a sense of teamwork and unity that makes the transition period a lot less chaotic. I'm not saying that it's going to be uh, completely like without any problems. Obviously, any transition is going to be somewhat messy, but I think we are going to be able to handle it because we're so united, and there's over build rebuilding Iran. Right, the amount of solidarity among Iranians is now more than ever. And even some of the divisions that we had before, a lot of that is gone because what we used to have as a point of unity was our opposition against the Islamic Republic. We had some divisions over what comes next, but now we don't have that division. Now we are pretty much the vast majority of us are like basically on the same page regarding what we want to come after the Islamic Republic, which is the return of Pahlavi. So that's going to reduce the chaos. And your last point that you made regarding whether or not the foreign powers, like the West, is going to do stuff and Maduro, like just come and remove Khamenei, just like they did with Maduro, and then whatever system is in place from the Islamic Republic to bring that back into power. I mean, there's always a chance for something like this happening, and we Iranians have to be very fighting. But I think the chances of this being successful in Iran is much less than in Venezuela. Like the people in Venezuela really didn't come out for Machado, like the way Iranian people are coming out for Prince Reza Pahlavi, right? So the Iranian people are dying, are giving up their lives just to be able to say his name. Like they are risking their lives, giving up their lives just to be able to come into the streets to just be able to chant out the Pahlavi name. So, and given the cost, this revolution is not over by the fall of the Islamic Republic. This revolution will, like, the Iranian people have been giving up so much lives, they have sacrificed so much lives, not for the end of the Islamic Republic, but for the sake of Pahlavi returning to Iran. Imagine more than, I think more than 50,000 Iranian people being murdered by the regime for the return of Pahlavi, and then you don't get the return of Pahlavi. Do you think the Iranian people are just going to go home and like, okay, like that's it, we're going to accept this? And in fact, like imagine if Khamenei is killed or removed, so Iran, a lot of Iranian people would be more encouraged that we're winning, right? So you're like, oh, Khamenei is killed, and now here we're going to continue with the Islamic Republic. No, we are now so much more encouraged that we're winning, so we're going to go all the way, right? So imagine if Khamenei is killed and United States just backs out and says just is content with something from the Islamic Republic taking the power in hand and just like then backing off. Well, the Iranian people are going to be back into the streets, right? I mean, the Iranian people are already waiting to go back into the streets, even if United States or Israel do not help. So if United States and Israel back off eventually after Khamenei dies and say like, well, this is good enough for us, well, the Iranian people are going to be back in the streets, and this the IRGC now, without Khamenei, now has to decide if they're going to surrender to millions of Iranian people continuing the revolution, or to continue shooting at them, right? And if they continue shooting at them, because if they don't, then they're going to have to surrender. So if they continue shooting at people, then we're going to be back where we are right now until Pahlavi is back. So this is why I see it very unlikely for world powers to be successful in to just pull off like a Maduro and be like, okay, we remove Khamenei, maybe we could have a version of the Islamic Republic that we are okay with. I don't think that is possible in Iran. Does that answer your question, Jeremy?
Yeah, thanks. Best of luck.
Jeffrey,
Yeah,
will
go
you
ahead.
Yes.
clarify for me, please, if you have something to add here or if you'd like to be added to the list? Good morning, Armin. Good afternoon, I guess.
Good afternoon.
With regards to the issue of reconstitution and autocratic reconstitution after the Mullah regime is removed, that that's always an issue you have to take into account with regards to any endeavor like this. I would contend that very issue that, like the very issues that Armin touched on, also underwrite the unique position that His Highness Prince Reza Pahlavi has, right, because of his historical connections in the transition period, because it tightens the window regarding any kind of residual elements or exogenous actors taking advantage of the instability and transition to try and reform autocratic control. Prince Reza Pahlavi, because of the role his father played, and rightly why a lot of Iranians very much have a lot of buy-in to that, to Prince Pahlavi's family and the role they played during the time of the Shah. I mean, he's uniquely qualified to help manage the transition. I don't think there's anybody else that could do it.
Yeah, not even close. Good
Okay,
point.
Gary, sir.
Gary?
Okay, am I unmuted?
Yes, we
Okay,
can hear you.
great. First of all, Armin, thanks for everything you said. I could only shake my head in agreement with everything you said. Everything. And I think the US has two main missions in Iran. I think first and foremost is the securing of the nuclear sites. Just being honest, given how things played out southeast of Baghdad in the Iraq War, I had no part in any of those discussions except awareness of the nuclear materials and the need to secure them, and the failure to secure them resulted in a lot of hard work over about a 5-year period, because there was essentially nuclear dust that was going back and forth between Ramadi and Al Azizaya and Najaf. That repeat of that in Iran is wholly unacceptable to the U.S. government and Department of Energy and to U.S. CENTCOM. So that's first and foremost. By occupying those sites, I would say that there will be, in addition to limited but overwhelming strikes, it will be in an effort to secure every one of the nuclear sites on the central part of the Iranian plateau, so that there are U.S. CENTCOM forces there, and then UN, International Atomic Energy Agency personnel can be there to help decommission them. That's first and foremost. But those will then set up islands that can connect Western Iran to Eastern Iran and Northern Iran to Southern Iran, so that they can do the work of forming their own government. I think that the United States has no intention of absconding with Ayatollah Khamenei, but instead placing him in internal exile, essentially in a zoo somewhere in either Mashhad, Qom, or Tehran, where he has no contact with the outside world, but he can be interrogated by everybody who comes after him. So I think those are missions 1 and 2 for what you're about to see unfold. And that's just my opinion.
I think for United States, the priority is going to be the enrichment, the uranium that has already been
Yes,
enriched, and I think the priority for Israel is going to be the rocket launchers.
yes.
For that's the highest priority for Israel to take at first. However, both of them, I think, realize. I hope they realize that we are going to be back here again if the regime doesn't fall.
The regime is going to fall. I just want to take that
Yeah.
off the table. The
Yeah.
regime is going to fall, and it's to the Israelis' benefit. And I have no contacts in Israel to confirm that. But the Israelis, I agree with you 100%, are interested in getting rid of those launchers, whether they're solid rocket or they're liquid fueled. They want to make sure those are not flying toward Israel. But for the U.S., it's securing the nukes and then making sure that nobody obstructs the Iranian people's choices of who's going to lead them.
Right. So I'm going to say this because I want this be recorded for people who might be, because some people don't care about this enough because they think this is an Iranian issue. But I also want to hear Iran, like, I want to make sure Iranians hear this because they need to frame their arguments based on the national interest of other countries rather than, oh, come help us, we're suffering. Yeah, well, okay, but the governments of other countries are supposed to be working based on what is in the best interest of their own citizens, right? So when you're framing your arguments and talking about this wherever you are, it's important that when you're talking about this, and I'm pretty sure their government officials already, and well, not the government officials, maybe their intelligence agencies already understand this. What you also need to basically really communicate to the citizens of this country is that the Islamic Republic has learned over the past 47 years how to make it more and more difficult to destroy their uranium enrichment facilities. And Israel has done a very good job in delaying their ability for the Islamic Republic to become a nuclear power, but they understand that you could only delay this so much. Every time they have delayed it, the Islamic Republic has learned from what Israel is able to do, and it has spread their enrichment uranium in more places inside Iran, and they have dug deeper holes. It's easier for you to learn how to dig deeper holes than for other people to learn how to create bunker busters that go deeper. Even though United States and Israel are very advanced at technology, learning how to just go deeper underground is actually a lot more straightforward. And that's why building enrichment uranium facilities that are really, really deep inside the mountains, at some point, you're not going to be able to get rid of. It's going to be something that the Islamic Republic has. And if the Islamic Republic was a nuclear power, then it's game over, right? It would means that they will treat as the Islamic Republic like they treat North Korea, meaning that they will not be the Islamic Republic would have a sense of safety and security, that nobody is going to be toppling them anymore, and they would be feel more secure, more safer when it comes to just exporting terrorism all around the world. Imagine what they did to the Iranian people, knowing that this is going to possibly get them a reaction out of the world to come and change, do regime change. But imagine what they would be willing to do to their own people once they think that nobody is going to come and help them out if they were a nuclear power. Imagine how much more brutal they would become if they had that level of confidence. So this is why it's completely within the interest of the entire world to get rid of the Islamic Republic, given how insistent they are to become a nuclear power. The world cannot tolerate an Islamic Republic that is a nuclear power. So this is in the best interest of the whole world. One thing else regarding Khamenei and Mirror's hiding, I don't know how true this is, but there's a lot of people from Iran who think that one of his bunkers is right underneath the Imam Reza Shrine in Mashhad, thinking that it being a very important religious site for Shia Muslims around the world would potentially make Americans or Israeli think twice before bombing it. So some Iranians think that his hiding area is under the Imam Reza Shrine under Mashhad. Gary, you wanted to say something about that?
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So for those of you who've not ever been to Mashhad, Armand, I think you have, but you know the underground rail system that they have there that heads then, west to Sharud and Semnan and then Tehran. There's a very significant catacomb of underground train track. And what has been known is that those have been completely, a la Gaza, those have been built out even deeper and deeper underground, and that if you put a gun to my head and said, here you have to place your bet, not obfuscate, I would agree with you that Mashhad is the most likely place because it gives them the opportunity to escape either to Turkmenistan or into Afghanistan from there relatively easy.
Yeah, and this is completely within their. I mean, it reminds a lot of Israelis of Hamas and how they operate. By the way, like hiding
Yeah.
under places that the world would condemn if they attack. We just, by the way, also yesterday we heard from Iran that a lot of the schools are being closed. So for the IRGC and Basij units, for example, to move into, and they're leaving their bases, like their Basij bases and their IRGC bases, because they think that US is going to bomb them, and they're moving to schools instead because they either think that they're less likely to be bombed, or if they are bombed they could basically tell the whole world that, like, oh look, Americans are bombing schools in Iran. So that's another strategy that they have. Okay.
I'm going to touch on a lot of the points that were brought up to help tighten the shock group. So you're very right about the risk. So given the Mullah regime's pseudo-theologic motives and subsequent inelasticity surrounding their aggression, coupled with the operational impact of revolutionary disruptive technologies that make it easier to sit there and procure things like visual materials. Silex comes to mind, which is a laser-based enrichment that fits in a garage and doesn't have UF6 outgassing. It requires very little electricity. This is all in-class stuff. You cannot allow to have, we cannot, the world cannot afford to have the Mullah regime continue. Now, the Mullah regime knows that. So the Mullah regime is doing everything it can to buy enough time for them to sprint across what I call the asymmetric deterrence threshold, defined as possession of ballistic missiles and nuclear weapons. Strikes, all the open intelligence indicators show we're getting ready to do a pretty comprehensive strike on the Mullah regime. And it's going to make, from what I'm looking at, with the assets we have in the region, if we pull that trigger, it's going to make the opening bombing campaigns in the US-led military intervention in Iraq look like a very shitty, low-end, like fireworks show. You are going to see shock and awe proper. Donald will have that over very quickly. What are the target sets they probably look at? So they're going to do SEAD, so suppression of enemy air defense, which means integrated air and missile defense, strategic radar, WMD stockpiles, meaning trucks where you put your missiles on to launch them. The missile cities kind of set in the open intelligence assessments of where they're located, because there's a lot of missiles under there. Regime leadership is definitely going to be in that target set. So is the IRGC and Besiege HQs, which is why the IRGC and Besiege have dispersed all their centers of gravity, right? They're also putting their people in places of civilian and or sociocultural importance with the idea of leveraging a tactical victory, kinetic victory where we drop bombs on targets into a soft power strategic defeat and or liability, because they go, oh look, see, you bombed like a baby milk factory, like what Saddam did when actually he buried the chemical weapon stuff underneath the baby factory. So as far as like Armin's observations regarding how we have to strike now, because it's in our interest, both the United States and the world's interest, for any number of different reasons, would take me too long to go through, that we should eliminate the regime now. When he talked about, like, the Mullah regime has spent the past 20 plus years strategically dispersing and hardening all of their primary centers of gravity, right? That's leadership bunkers, that's places like Fort Al, Isfahan, Natanz. And this kind of goes back to the red, black, and contemporary red green alliance and the role the radical left has played in facilitating that. So in 2012 at CPAC, I went and had lunch with Frank Gaffney, who is the head of Center for Security Policy, and I'll actually post the redacted email in the discussion board after this, and warned him of the fact that the Mullah regime has hardened its underground structures with a very particular high-end micro-reinforced ultra-high-performance concrete that was in part, in no insignificant manner, developed in conjunction with and in cooperation with leftist academicians out of Canada's universities. The excuse used was they, being the Mullah regime, was trying to harden buildings against earthquakes, which is true. You can use that to harden your buildings against earthquakes. That's not what they were doing. So I just wanted to add some of that historical context to underwrite why Armin's saying what he's saying. The convergence of the operational impact of revolutionary technologies coupled with, which makes it easier for actors to procure WMDs, coupled with the Mullah regime's pseudo-theological motivation and subsequent inelasticity regarding their hostility, means that mowing the grass is not sustainable, right? Remember what the Mullah regime said, Armin? He's like, you can't destroy the facilities, but you can't destroy the technology. That's
Yeah.
very true there, Mr. Mullah.
You should make them keep talking because this is actually helpful for us. I don't know why. By the way, if anybody wonders like why are they saying this? Don't they want to live? Like, wouldn't their saying this make the world more united to get rid of them? Like, what is the strategy here? The reason why they have to say this is because if they don't say this, they're going to be toppled by the hardliner base support base they already have, right? So a lot of their activities might like look insane to you. You think like at this time shouldn't you be like shutting up? Like why are you inviting war? This is like the end of you. Their understanding, and I think this is correct, like this is a correct analysis by them, is that the only reason why they might have a fighting chance is the few percentage remaining support that they have, right? So you might think that the Iran millions of Iranian people in the streets are a threat to them. You might think America and Israel attacking them are a threat to them, which they are. But the greatest threat to them above all of this is losing the small remaining percentage support that they have. So if they don't come out and say, like, oh my God, we're going to destroy America, we're going to destroy Israel, and basically they cannot defeat us, and all of this BS that they say, if they don't say that, then they're going to lose their small remaining support that they have, and that will actually bring their end even faster than an American and Israeli attack or millions of Iranian people in the streets.